Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, comic fans from across the globe. It's time once again for Ask Chuck Dixon, where you get to ask me questions. You get my opinions, critiques, whatever you want. You send that question in, I'll answer it. And I think, as many of you longtime listeners realize, I'll answer your questions quite bluntly. Using my decades of experience as a well-known, world-renowned, well, I'd say award-winning, but I really haven't done that yet, writer of comic books, which is what I do for a living. Yes, I'm that Chuck Dixon. First of all, before we get into anything else, I know you get a lot of contact with me here. It's somewhat direct, but an even more direct contact with me would be at Discord at spinrack.io, where Graham Nolan and I pretty much hold court. We're part of SpinRack. We are SpinRack. SpinRack is a creator-owned, creator-driven multimedia company. We're getting into digital comics, print comics, games, digital collectibles, merchandise, all kinds of stuff to expand the audience for comics. It's Comics 3.0. And if you go to Discord, there's lots of places where you can talk to us. You can try your hand at doing artwork on some tryout scripts, which are available only on Discord, SpinRack at Discord. So head on over there. And if you're a wannabe writer, penciler, inker, letterer, colorist, we're there to offer our opinion on your work and guide you along. We've had some submissions so far that are very promising, some really cool stuff. Some extraordinarily talented people out there, and we'd like you to be one of them. So why don't you go to Discord and sign up for spinrack.io. And I want to put out a Ask Chuck Dixon thank you to all of you who helped me out by sending in that panel I was talking about either last week or the week before. I'd like to thank Damian Field, Andrew Venables, Mark Charters, Ditko Kirby, that's not your real name, and last but never least, Dwayne Thomas. And this is the panel in question from Legends of the DC Universe number 6, script by Kelly Puckett. I always misquote this line. But it's basically Batman telling Dick Grayson to never trust Superman. He's not human, Dick. Never forget that. Okay. So thanks, guys, for supplying that panel that I talk about so often, but I can never find on my own. J. Haley Tang. So I recently read a comic from a writer I've been a fan of for a long time, writing a classic character I've always been a fan of for a long time, and it really just missed the mark for me. It was just so boring and so, I guess, flaccid. I was so bored by it that I had to go reread some of his earlier stuff to see if it still held up, or if it was just my nostalgia. Largely did hold up. I think what happened was he had worked on too many characters like this character, and he's just bored of it. Now, I know you've worked on a lot of similar characters on paper. Tim Drake and Connor Hawke aren't that different, but they never felt the same in the actual comics, and it never feels like you've gotten bored of working with a certain archetype. So my question, I know finally, right, is how do you circumvent this problem? How do you prevent similar characters from being derivative? How do you keep it fun for yourself and also the reader? Well, this is a problem that, every writer faces if they get locked into or noted for a certain genre. You're going to be asked to write more in that genre. Luckily for me, I never specialized. I was never just a superhero guy or just a horror guy or just a Western guy or just a mystery guy. I'll write any genre. I just love genres as a genre. So that's never been a problem for me. And if I'm faced, and I've created a number of Punisher type characters in my comics career and novel writing career. And I always look for a way to turn that genre on its head, to examine what the building blocks of that particular genre are and try to turn it around or find a new way in or find a new angle, not just rewrite the same old origin over and over and over again. I mean, I'm currently creating a new character called Black Warrant for Arctoons, who's very much like a Punisher character, a masked vigilante character, but his origins and his motivations and everything else are quite different than Frank Castle's, as well as his targets and his modus operandi. He's not a Frank Castle knockoff. He's a different kind of cat. So, but mainly, I don't understand a writer writing something they're bored with. I would never want to write something I'm bored with. If I was bored, I know I wouldn't do my best job. I've turned down jobs because I'm like, I don't like this character. I don't care about this character. I can't get invested in this character. But, I used to write kids' books, Winnie the Pooh, Raggedy Ann and Andy, stuff like that. And I could get invested in the characters because they were well constructed, classic children's book characters. It was a reason why they're popular for, oh my gosh, Winnie the Pooh, 100 years. Raggedy Ann and Andy, 100 years. They've been around. And there's a reason for that they're indelible and lasting. And I just had to find the heart of that and just sort of invest myself in those characters. So I never was bored writing them. I read a book by Quentin Tarantino recently called Cinema Speculation, and he talks about creators involved in genres that maybe they weren't interested in. And he talks about people like, Sam Peckinpah and Don Siegel, and particularly Brian De Palma, about that these were directors who had to work in the genres because that was the only work they could get. Now, obviously, Sam Peckinpah liked Westerns, but he worked in other genres that he could be associated with, crime dramas, things like that. Same for Don Siegel. And of course, Brian De Palma, early in his career, specialized in Hitchcockian thrillers. And Tarantino says that why they did this was they wanted to be like real filmmakers. They wanted to make big time A pictures, but that wasn't allowed to them. That they filled a role as genre film directors. You're going to do this, prison movie. You're going to do this. You're going to do that, and they would be assigned things. Now De Palma pitched a lot of his own projects, but still, anyway, I'll get into De Palma in a minute. But so a lot of these directors, these auteur directors who we remember, who were very good at doing, action films and westerns, Raoul Walsh and people like that, Andre de Toth, Delmer Daves. I mean, these great directors who primarily worked in genre films, probably not their first choice. But what they would do is they would take that genre film, that standard film noir movie or horror movie or whatever, and they would add something to make it their own. They would add something of themselves to it. It wasn't just an assignment. They weren't just phoning it in. And that's why we remember those directors, because they brought something personal to it. They brought a great degree of attention and a great degree of pride that their name was going on the director credit. And so they really put the effort in. And that's why we remember them as great directors. But those weren't their first choice. Now, De Palma became he liked Hitchcock films, but he didn't love Hitchcock films. But he saw that there was a need for Hitchcock films. Pretty much when Roman Polanski, after the Manson family murders, sort of checked out of the film industry, and Polanski was seen as the logical successor to Hitchcock for that kind of a movie thriller. When Polanski sort of dropped out, De Palma saw his shot at becoming a big-time film director. And really, quite wisely, it worked out for him, didn't it? So he thought, well, I'm going to be the next Hitchcock. And he sort of aimed himself at that. Not his first choice, not what he would have done in a perfect world. He would have directed different kind of movies. But he thought, well, to get to those different kind of movies I really want to do, first I'm going to have to make a name for myself, and here's the spot. His only competition at the time was Dario Argento, and while Dario Argento extraordinarily talented, I'm going to submit Dario Argento was a little too weird for American audiences. And so De Palma jumps in and very successfully produces a group of Hitchcock knockoffs. Now, proof that De Palma really wasn't in love with this genre, although he was very adept at it, is his later efforts in it. We get to the 80s and it's getting a little tired. Like, as you said, that writer being bored with a genre, De Palma becomes bored with the genre. Now, what follows is, after this crop of filmmakers from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, a whole bunch of filmmakers enter the field who love genre movies. They want to do genre movies. John Milius, George Lucas, guys like that, John Carpenter, they jump at the chance. This is their milieu. This is what they want to do. And that's the big difference between directors going forward and the directors of today and the directors of the past. The directors of the past all wanted to make Casablanca or Citizen Kane, but they wound up directing Roy Rogers movies because that's what was available. So to answer, to give a short answer after that long answer, the writer in question probably was bored with the genre, couldn't think or couldn't be bothered to bring anything fresh to it, to sort of take a second look at it and reinvent their typecasting in that genre. And so they just kind of, phoned it in. Personally, as I said before, if I was offered an assignment like that and I just had no interest, if there was nothing I had to really contribute to it, I would say, no, why don't you give it to some young tyro, looking to make a name for himself, and probably end up with a better product at the end than me just treading the same ground over and over and over again. Okay, David Conkle. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Most novels have a character arc. What about comic books? What about a story for something like Savage Sword of Conan? Do Conan stories even have character arcs? He seems the same character from your recent novel to the original Robert E. Howard tales. Well, some characters don't have arcs. Some characters, they're the same at the end of the story as they were at the beginning. And we don't need any explanations of why they're doing what they're doing or who they are. They don't need to grow. They don't need to learn anything. And so, they're kind of comfort food characters. And I think we like those kind of characters. I think we need more of those kind of characters. Writers today sort of pad out their characterizations, filling in detail that's really not necessarily the story. A character like Conan, if you don't understand who Conan is in the first 3 pages, the writer hasn't done his job. Conan is driven by greed. He's driven by lust. He's driven by all the 7 deadly sins. He's a negative male stereotype. He's a badass. He's undefeatable, and he's a clever guy, as well as being, a big muscle-bound freak with a sword. So, why would that character need to grow? He's already very, very interesting. No. I mean, what is a character arc? Groundhog Day is a film probably most of you have seen, and it's a perfect example of character arc. Bill Murray starts out as a complete prick at the beginning of the film, only cares about himself, yet he's smitten with Andie MacDowell. Although in classic romantic comedy formula, he has to earn that love. We don't really like him, which is unusual for a romantic comedy. We're supposed to like the characters who are falling in love. We don't really like him. We think he's funny, and we kind of understand why he is the way he is. He's in a job he really doesn't like, that he's probably overqualified for. He's certainly more talented than the work he's more qualified for a more talented position than the one he has. Frustrated in life. But he likes Andie MacDowell, and he wants to win her over. And Groundhog Day, because he gets to repeat the same day over and over again, he learns how to be the man that she would be attracted to. And he learns, as much as a Bill Murray character can learn, about compassion and caring about other people and things like that. And it's classic, and it's a classic reworking of the romantic comedy genre of the past, of Preston Sturges or Frank Capra or Ernst Lubitsch or any of these people, where the characters grow and learn and basically earn the love of the person that they're smitten with. And also we learn to like them. We certainly liked Bill Murray a lot more at the end of Groundhog Day than we did at the beginning. So he's had a distinct character arc. He has changed. Much like a movie I talk about quite often, Lady Eve, in which Barbara Stanwyck goes through like 3 different transformations in her romantic seduction of Henry Fonda, of character Henry Fonda. At first, she sees him as a bumbling idiot that she's going to con. Then she falls for him and is insulted when he rejects her. And so she uses all of her con woman skills to get herself back into his heart for the happy ending of the film. It's a really fascinating romantic comedy. But again, it like Groundhog Day, it's a romantic comedy that turns the genre on its head, as I was talking about in the previous question. It doesn't treat the boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy regains girl formula. It sort of twists and turns that into a pretzel, making the film, the classic romantic comedies of the 30s and 40s are all very entertaining and very funny. But Lady Eve sort of shows how you could really mess with the formula and come up with an extraordinarily engaging film that sort of elevates itself above the usual rom-com tropes. Now, I mean, a more stark example would be John Wayne. John Wayne's archetypical role is he doesn't learn anything. He doesn't grow. He's a badass from frame 1 of the movie. We might learn that he has a sense of humor. We might learn that he's quick to anger. We might learn things like that, but these are all part of his character going in. He's not transformed into this character. He is this character from the beginning of the movie to the end. And that's what we like about these movies. We like that constancy. These are wish fulfillment characters. We put ourselves in their place. We wish we could be like them. I wish I could be as manly and tough and rough and plain spoken as John Wayne, and everybody fear and respect me. And that's what we want. But then we have a film like The Searchers, which has a definite character arc. In this movie, John Wayne plays a more nuanced, more deeply characterized character named Ethan Edwards, who is back from the Civil War, and he's lost everything. He's had everything he loved crushed, and he's openly racist character. He hates Comanches, and he just hates them because they're Comanches. And he has to go searching for a niece who's been taken away by Comanches. And the movie is involved in a quest to find this niece. Now, this movie's fascinating because its character arc takes place in seconds. I won't spoil the movie for you, but we learn, it's such a terrific film. We learn at the climax of the movie that our understanding of what John Wayne's mission is, we didn't get it. You know, he has a completely ulterior motive as to why he's looking for his niece. And it comes out in just a terrific scene that must have, it's still shocking today, and must have horrified audiences in the 50s. John Wayne? Where suddenly John Wayne turns from hero to villain in the movie. And that's his arc. But the thing is, the arc has been happening the whole time we're watching the movie, and we're just not aware of it. You can see it, on a second and third viewing, you can see it telegraphed. This shocking climax of the film. If you've never seen The Searchers, go watch it right now. Stop watching this and go watch that. But that's a stark example of character arc. The difference between the characters John Wayne played and his, average. Some of them are great. I mean, the character that John Wayne normally played in westerns, the archetypical Western hero, versus movies like The Searchers or Red River, where he goes through changes, he learns things, he grows, or devolves as a character as the film goes along. Because characters can get worse, not better. They don't always have to get better over the course of a film. Okay. Concolt gets a twin spin. I was talking on Twitter, yeah. Well, there's no embarrassment about Twitter, about not wanting to read about Batman crying, the recent Batman marriage run. Someone mentioned Batman always cried. As someone who wrote Batman for a long time, what is your take on this? My take is that's bull. This is the argument, when the Milkshake crew at both companies mess with characters that we know and love, either kill them or change them or morph them or have them spouting Marxist propaganda or dealing in sexual politics, and we reject it. We're the bad guys, of course. This is just lazy writing, and they always say, well, Batman's always cried. Superheroes have always been political. It's like, it's a nonsense argument, and it's simply not true. My Batman doesn't cry. Your Batman doesn't cry. My Batman is a badass. My Batman is tough. He maybe cried as a child when his parents died, but that's the last time. Nothing's going to reach him like that again. He's never going to feel that kind of pain again. Because Batman is a male wish fulfillment figure, and he's stoic. Stoic to the nth degree. So you're simply not going to have a weepy Batman. Who wants to read a weepy Batman? I don't want to read a weepy Batman any more than I want to read about a Batman who pees himself. These are lazy writers who can't think of how to write the character within the formula, within the framework of the character. And so they think they're being very, very clever by introducing new flaws and new dimensions that are not welcome to longtime readers like you and me. And when I say you and me, I'm talking to all of you, because you wouldn't be here if you wouldn't be asking Chuck Dixon questions if you love weepy Batman. Hey, it came from the Twitterverse. Speaking of Twitter, we have a little missive dropped in here from the Gunslinger. Chuck, I've been a fan of the Punisher since I was a kid, and I always wanted to ask, do they hate the Punisher because he doesn't fit into their vision, or do they hate him because of the idea that the fans liking the idea that refutes most of their heroes don't kill argument? I've gone into this in some depth. I'm going to go into it even more now, because I get asked this question all the time. Why does Marvel reject the Punisher? Why does Marvel not like the Punisher? They don't like him for the same reason that DC doesn't like Guy Gardner. And fans like the Punisher for the same reason they like Guy Gardner. Most comic book characters are either brainiacs, mutants, scientists, whatever. There's very few superheroes that have a blue-collar origins. Frank Castle and Guy Gardner are blue-collar superheroes. They are average guys driven to extremes. And a lot of readers respond to that because a lot of readers aren't brainiacs, mutants, or scientists. They're driving a truck or stocking shelves or, working for a paycheck. And people respond to these characters because of those origins. And because they have blue-collar origins, when they're written correctly, they say stuff and do stuff that other comic book characters won't. They don't have the same mores, the same code. Now, as far as superheroes don't kill, Wolverine certainly kills. We see other comic book heroes, superheroes who kill. It's hard to believe Captain America didn't kill a lot of Nazis. He didn't take them all prisoner. This is a misnomer. To single out Frank Castle because he kills people, if that's their argument, it's not an accurate one. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to go into a little more detail about it. Like Frank Castle and Guy Gardner, Archie Bunker was created to be a villain, the bad guy. Archie Bunker was created to be the the butt of his own, but the butt of all the jokes. He was created to be, a character that basically gets crapped upon in every story because he's casually racist. What do I mean by casually racist? Archie doesn't go to Klan rallies. He doesn't actively try to chase people of color out of his neighborhood. He doesn't do anything except spout off. And he holds some unfortunate stereotypes. So he's casually racist. He's not actively racist. And when confronted with his racism, he generally backs down. This probably isn't a thing now, but growing up, I would see adults who were casually racist, and these would be black people and white people, and on a couple occasions, Latino people. And if they didn't care for some segment of the society, they would let you know in no uncertain terms. But if they worked with someone like that, or they were at a party or event with the people that they had just maligned, they would be perfectly polite to their face and everything else, because they weren't actively racist. They weren't like, the next time I see a member of that minority, I'm going to punch them in the face. Because, the rule was we all tried to get along. And so this is an aspect of human nature that no one tolerates anymore. If you're a racist all the way to the ground, and you're evil and horrible and stupid and awful. Now, the problem they run into when they create Archie Bunker is that he's a New Yorker, and he's a figure that the writers are familiar with. They've met people like this. They're New Yorkers, and they've met people from Brooklyn, from Queens, from the Bronx, from Staten Island, who are just like Archie Bunker, who might make, casually offensive remarks or hold unpopular opinions, unpopular to them. So they weren't going to write Archie the way they usually wrote bigots. Because when they usually wrote bigots, they were Southerners. And they were ignorant and stupid, and they had no character. They just hated black people, and that's all there was about them. They needed no further characterization other than to present them as idiots with no purpose in life other than to serve as a bête noire of American prejudice. And so they didn't need to delve any deeper, because none of these writers had ever met anybody from the South. So they didn't understand any of the nuances. They didn't understand that everybody below the Mason-Dixon line was not, a mouth-breathing hillbilly. And I can say this because I come from a long line of mouth-breathing hillbillies. So, so when they go to create Archie, they're going to be more true to the kind of blue-collar cab driver, construction worker, contractor that they may have met in life. And they're going to put things in Archie's mouth that are basically middle-class common sense phrasing. Well, lo and behold, the audience fell in love with this character. They were supposed to hate him. They were supposed to always laugh at him. And we did laugh at Archie, but we more often than not laughed at Meathead, who Meathead was speaking for the New York writers. But when he came across as a character, he came across as an idiot, a naif, someone with no experience in life who couldn't back up any of his arguments. And Archie always could. And Archie spoke like most of the audience watching, because most of this country used to be blue collar. And Archie was speaking for them. Now, every once in a while, he'd say some unfortunate racial slur or put forward some unfortunate racial stereotype. But in the main, he was making sense about things in the country, how the country was in decline, and you couldn't trust anybody, and the system wasn't working anymore, and the working man was put upon, and all the things about taxes and prices and all the things, and the audience related to these in a big way. And I'm certain that the writers were horrified that the American television audience took to this guy. He was one of them. And, they knew people like this, and they could relate to Archie more than any of the other characters on the show. And of course, CBS didn't waste any time merchandising. Even though they promoted a show where Archie was the villain, Archie was a bigot, Archie was an unreconstructed, Neanderthal, that did not stop CBS from licensing Archie's image to greeting card companies, t-shirt companies, bumper stickers, all the rest, in order to make, they were going to, despite their being horrified at the results, they were going to make cash off of Archie. And Marvel did the same thing for a long time until, new people took over at Marvel, and they were just really, really just embarrassed about everything about the Punisher, particularly his audience. They didn't like the Punisher, and they didn't like the people who liked the Punisher. And I think really this all came to a head when our military and police began using the Punisher skull symbol on uniforms. I mean, literally painting it on the sides of armored personnel carriers and Bradley fighting machines in Iraq and things like that. And suddenly the public was seeing the Punisher skull symbol. Many of them for the first time. Non-comic book readers didn't know what the symbol was, but here it was popping up everywhere on car windows and things like that. And as I said, actually on military vehicles in Iraq. And the cops are wearing the symbol. Ooh, our soldiers are wearing the symbol. Oh, boo, boo, boo. We don't like them. And so we don't like them. We don't like the Punisher readers. We're going to take the Punisher and we're going to mangle him. We're going to destroy him. We're going to do what no other entertainment company ever has done. We are going to purposely take one of our intellectual properties and tear it to the ground. And that's what they did. And it is for that reason. Any other lofty reason they give is BS. The main reason they wanted to get rid of the Punisher is because they hated the Punisher and they hate you for liking him. And it is that simple. Why else would they do what they did in such a ham-handed, Soviet-style deconstruction of an extremely popular fictional character? Who would do that? Why would they do it? They don't like you. It's as simple as that. Christos, I remember a great issue of The Punisher where he tortured and killed a dirty cop. You see what I mean? Do you think you would have ever written that into your Punisher run? No. I think I can justifiably say that quite famously, I presented a Punisher torture sequence involving a popsicle and some illusions that Mickey Fandazzi had that he was actually being burned with an acetylene torch. But not. I never wrote Punisher torturing anybody because that would make the Punisher, despite his name, that would make him a sadist. I don't want to write about a sadist. I didn't want to present the Punisher as some sicko who the way lazy writers will say, well, the hero and the villain, they're just opposite sides of a coin. I've always rejected that. That's idiotic. Was Audie Murphy and Adolf Hitler the opposite sides of the same coin? I don't think so. I really don't think so. So I went out of my way to show that Frank was perfectly capable of getting information from people that he wanted to get that information from, but he would never stoop to torture. Now, I did write a story in Marvel Knights number 10, in which Frank is arrested by a pair of corrupt cops, and he lures them to what they think is going to be a storage unit that's like an Aladdin's cave of the Punisher's ill-gotten gains that he's stolen from drug lords and things like that. But it turns out to be a trap, of course. The Punisher set up a machine gun to go off if someone opens the door without entering the proper code, and the two cops are killed. But even then, I didn't want to have Punisher kill police officers, so they, in the grand old fashion of the comics code, the two crooked cops die by their own machinations. Look up the old comics code. It actually says the villains, if the villains die, they have to die of their own machinations. They can't be directly killed by the hero. So I kind of drew the line at Punisher killing any kind of cops, even dirty ones. So, yeah, I would not write a scene where Punisher tortured anybody, let alone a crooked cop, no matter how much they may have deserved it. Ian Potash, where do you stand when it comes to killing characters you didn't create? Different creators, was a lot of death in this episode. Different creators have different standards. Marv Wolfman said he wouldn't kill characters made before he was born. That's cool. And Mark Grunwald said he won't kill off characters made by other writers. Also cool. After initially creating the villain Scourge to do just that. Yeah, I mean, I killed Mr. Freeze, but I was editorially directed to kill Mr. Freeze. And I always thought, well, is Mr. Freeze ever actually dead? And of course, then I brought him back. No, I would not kill a character someone else created unless I had long discussions with editorial about why this must happen. And also spoke to the creators of that character to get their opinion on what we're about to do. Yes, I did kill Oliver Queen. It was editorially directed. The creators of Oliver Queen were no longer with us. And it was understood by everybody, including my editors at DC, as well as the fans, that Ollie would be back someday. He's a comic book character. They're always going to come back. Now, from a creator standpoint, yeah, I was a little ticked at the way they killed Spoiler. They tortured her to death. Strongly implied she was raped as well. I thought, wow, I mean, she doesn't die like Bucky in an explosion. She's, very graphically depicted horrible death, a misogynistic death. And I thought, nobody talked to me about it. Nobody told me it was going to happen. I had to find out from fans. What do you think about Spoiler being killed? I'm like, what? So yeah, speaking as a creator, yeah, I don't like to see my stuff killed. But I've had DC in particular has killed dozens of my characters. They killed nearly every Nightwing villain I ever created, which I kind of take personally. So Marv and Mark, yeah, I would follow those rules. It's just courtesy. Aiden Belcher, could you describe the concept of the illusion of change a little bit more? How do you make things interesting and create real stakes while acknowledging that nothing in the established status quo can actually change? I'm sure that it's a difficult thing to do in a story with an established character, so I was curious how you were able to do it so well and what your thought process was when writing this in mind. Well, it's as simple as you got to convince the reader that we made it this time. We're killing Superman. He's going to be dead. He's never coming back. Forget about Clark Kent. You're never going to see him again. And you have to absolutely convince them. And, and the best way to do this is, epic story, set it up right and just go to town, with a crew of talented creators, as they did when they killed Death of Superman. This is a freaking epic story. No matter how cynical you are, you had to be touched by this story. And of course, Superman was long history of misleading and quote unquote imaginary tales and, what ifs and all the rest of it. So this is just one more. The Death of Superman so perfectly fits into the Superman milieu that it was accepted by everybody as, an earnest attempt to do a super dramatic story. And then, of course, the resolution of it and his return, handled by the same group of extraordinarily talented pros, people who really gave a crap. So it was all good. Now, how do you create the illusion of change? You raise the stakes. You put the character into so much jeopardy. You have them make challenging choices. Because remember, these are wish fulfillment characters. And when we read about them, we put themselves in our place. What would I do? Not what Batman would do, but what would I do in this situation? I'd give up or give in or, I couldn't escape this trap. I couldn't defeat this villain. I'm willing to, rat out my cousin to get out of this trouble, whatever. Pay the ransom. But these heroes don't. And that's what makes them compelling. That's what makes them interesting. Because every time they leave the house or the cave, they could die. Just like a police officer saying goodbye to his family might be for the last time. And even though the characters have been around for years and years and years and years and years, it's the writer's job to make you believe that they are still at risk of either losing their own life or losing something important to them. I remember when on Miami Vice, when Sonny Crockett's car got blown up, the car we had all fallen in love with for like 3 seasons suddenly explodes, mostly because it was a oh man, I forget what kind of car it was. It was an Italian import car, and it was phony. A Ferrari. It was a phony Ferrari. It was actually snapped on a Ferrari body. I'm really getting into the weeds here, but who cares? It's my show. It was a Ferrari body snapped onto an American chassis. And Ferrari was very upset that they weren't using a licensed Ferrari and demanded that it be taken out of the show. And the people who were making the show thought, well, let's blow it up. And it was shocking. It was like you lost a friend. It was like they shot trigger. And we loved this car, and they just blew it up. That's illusion of change. Nothing really changed. Sonny just got another car. But he lost something. And that sort of adds gravity to a character when they lose something. I mean, when Jason Todd died, it added gravity to Batman. There were real stakes now. Robin's died before in the book. It wasn't exactly a new idea, but each time something like that happens, it adds stakes to the character, makes you more concerned with them. Now, when I was a kid, I read Fantastic Four number 20, in which they faced the Molecule Man. Now, I'm just a kid, and there's no Diamond previews. The only way you knew what comics were out was you went to the newsstand and whatever was there was there. You didn't know what was coming. You didn't know if your favorite comic was canceled. You'd never see it again, right? There was nobody to tell you what comics were coming out 3 months from now. So every issue of every comic you read could be the last. And you knew that as a kid. So the Fantastic Four up against Molecule Man, and Molecule Man can, as his name suggests, manipulate molecules. He manipulate all matter on a molecular level at will with his funny little wand. Now, it's a silly character, but to me as a kid, he was terrifying. This guy affects the atomic structure of everything in the universe. It means just whatever he wants to have happen, he can make happen. How in the hell are the Fantastic Four going to defeat this guy? He's going to kill them, right? They're going to die trying to defeat this guy. This is impossible. And as a kid, reading this in the back seat of our Studebaker on the way back from Stone Harbor, New Jersey, on a summer afternoon, I was absolutely convinced that Fantastic Four number 20 was the last time I would ever see the Fantastic Four, that by the end of the story, this guy was going to kill them, or they were going to give up, and Molecule Man was going to rule the Marvel Universe forever. I'm a kid, so I believe this. And of course, nobody was better than Stan and Jack of just pulling something out of thin air. And of course, the FF get help from the greatest Deus Ex Machina ever created, the Watcher, who so often interceded to help the Fantastic Four defeat an impossible villain. But you gotta give a credit to Stan Jack, because he created a character so difficult to defeat that the FF have to turn to a completely random plot device in order to reach the end of the story still breathing. But that, my friend, is illusion of change. If you can get the readers that wrapped up in believing, and it's harder because most comic fans are older. I mean, kids aren't reading these things anymore. They're older. They're cynical. They've been around the block. They're really reading a lot of these comics ironically. So it gets harder and harder to convince this hard-hearted crew that the stuff you're showing them is really happening and really going to affect change. But illusion of change is, you make things tough for the hero, but in the end, everything goes back to the status quo because he's going to be around another 100 years. You can't be messing with that continuity. David Jordan. I recently read the miniseries and was laughing at, he's talking about cyber rats here. I don't know why I cut off the beginning of this. I recently read the miniseries Cyber Rats and was laughing at how it was a big roast of Coca-Cola. Do you actually dislike it, or was it just a satire on our love of sugar waters with no actual benefits? Well, Cyber Rats was a miniseries back in the day, and I had read a book called The Cola Wars, and it was about basically Coca-Cola's 100-year-long fight, or more than 100-year-long fight, to be unique, to monopolize the cola market. And the things they would do, even up into the 70s, and probably still do it today, they did some really vile business practices, whisper campaigns, a lot of times involving race, to discourage competition. They had a whisper campaign when Pepsi was first introduced. And Pepsi, again, I'm going to get geeky, but it's my show. Pepsi used to use reused beer bottles. They would buy beer bottles. This was recycling before they had a word for it. This is in the 1920s. Pepsi would buy used beer bottles, 12-ounce beer bottles, and then put their Pepsi Cola in there and sell it for a nickel. That was 12 ounces of Pepsi versus 6 ounces of Coke for a nickel. So for a nickel, you were getting twice as much of the same similarly tasting product. So Pepsi began to rise in market share. And Coca-Cola responded to this with a whisper campaign implying that only black people drank Pepsi Cola because they were cheap. And Pepsi Cola was really an inferior product and not really good enough for white people. And this successfully drove Pepsi Cola's market share down because people didn't want to be associated with it because, well, that was the world then. And Pepsi would employ those kind of tactics into the 70s and 80s to discourage any kind of competition, sometimes from regional cola bottlers. But the Cyber Rats, which were sort of a adjunct of Robin's Pocket Universe, they go to war against the two major soda companies that are fighting one another in the DC universe, the two fictional. I remember there was Soda Cola, and I cannot remember the rival soda company made. So Soda Cola was created by the Superman guys at the time, and I created the rival. It was Burpsy Cola or something like that, something like Pepsi Cola. But that was fun stuff. That was fun stuff. Ofe, so excited for your upcoming work in the Rippaverse. Any little tidbits or info you can share on the story of Alpha Core for your loyal channel viewers? Will there be a foil cover? Foil covers are out of my purview, but yes, I am writing for the Rippaverse and having a good time. I've written my second project for them. These will be a pair. Each of these, Alpha Core and the new project, whose name I cannot reveal yet, are both 90-page graphic novels, both drawn by the same artist. I also can't name him. Eric wants to be the one to name the artist. And it's not Graham Nolan, as so many people have guessed, but it's a big name, jaw-dropping guy you know. You're going to go, what? Be sitting down when Eric tells you who the artist is. And the art on Alpha Core is all completed. I was just looking at lettering and lettered and colored pages just last week. So what can I tell you about it? These are the superhero cops of Flora Spark, the fictional Texas town where most of the Rippaverse action happens. And these cops, they got superpowers. They've got their own basic division. And the story is it's very much an action superhero story. But it has a lot of police procedural elements. There are homicides. There's a strong heist element. and lots of intrigue, and these super characters have to use their detective skills, and that's part of the story, is that the Florida Spark PD see these guys as sort of, if the SWAT team fails calling these guys, they see them as a blunt force object as opposed to real cops. And Alpha Corps is out to prove that we are cops in every way, including investigation skills. We're not to be trifled with. We're not to be put down. We're not just to be used as a sledgehammer when all else fails. We're real cops, and we want to be involved in crime fighting in every way. So that's kind of at the core of Alpha Corps. But I introduce a whole lot of new villains, some new ancillary characters, and this is the most fun, and Eric lets me go wild with it. I get to play in the world building of the Rippaverse, creating, things that will be around, establishing things like street names and place names, and county names and businesses and things like that. Same thing Eric is doing over on ISOM, but I'm getting to play too. And I'm always surprised when someone creates something like this, as Eric has created this entire universe of superheroes. I'm always surprised when someone's as generous as he is to let me come in and fool around in their playground. Move the equipment around and add value to what they've already created. At least I hope I'm adding value. And I'm always grateful for that. So he's been a terrific collaborator, and you can't beat his audience. I mean, this guy's doing numbers. This guy's doing numbers on trade paperbacks that most DC and Marvel pamphlet comics sell at these numbers. This guy's moving trade paperbacks at those numbers. So he's for real. He's here to stay. He has an extraordinarily loyal and growing audience, and I want to help him grow that audience, and I want to, bring whatever I can to help make this happen. And as I have, working with Graham Nolan, working with Richard Meyer, working with Fox Day, to add whatever it is I can add to their brand, and I'm having a good time doing it. Ian Potash again. Boy, I should have given you a twin spin. Sorry about that, Ian. I have a question regarding Punisher's costume. Man, it's a Punisher episode. How do you feel about Frank's classic black and white look? It seems a lot of the newer comics try to ground his look by taking away his white gloves and boots, sometimes until he's just wearing a skull t-shirt, no actual costume, not to mention the trench coat craze of the early 2000s. I know having white in his costume doesn't really make much sense tactically, but for many fans, this is Frank's definitive look, and we can suspend our disbelief when it comes to the core part of the character being portrayed. I like that classic Punisher look, but, as you said, if you're going to ground the character in reality, it doesn't work. And I kind of go with, back in the day, when I was first breaking into comics, the guy to beat in my mind, my main rival in the comic book writing profession was Mike Baron. And a lot of writers felt that way. You talk about Alan Moore, you can talk about Frank Miller, but Mike was there every month with just amazing stuff. And, great ideas, terrific characterizations, and all the rest of it. He seemed to be writing comics that kids can enjoy, but grown-ups as well. There was depth there. And also he was one of the few comic writers at the time writing cinematically, and that's what I wanted to do. Those were my kind of comics. That was pure comics. That's what I wanted to write. And so many ideas that Mike came up with, I just fell in love with. And one of them was his character, the Badger, had a costume, full superhero costume, but then Mike began to play with it because Mike realized as long as he's wearing that mask and he has the Badger symbol in, black against red on his chest, he's obviously the Badger. He's got that crazy, dirty blonde hair, or red hair. I can't remember. The Badger, I guess, is a redhead. He's a ginger. As long as he had that, he was recognizably the Badger. And so Mike began playing with the idea of him wearing sleeveless T-shirts, tank tops. He came up with camouflaged outfits for him. There was a particular issue I really loved with snow camouflage Badger outfit. And it struck me, it's like, wow, every superhero could be like this. I mean, you got characters like Batman and Superman, although I don't like it when they change Superman's costume. But Batman's costume in the past, certainly, was always adaptable. As long as the bat symbol was on there and he had the cowl with the ears, that was Batman, And so when Mike comes over to the Punisher, he does the same thing. He sort of strips down Punisher's normal costume to a T-shirt, a tank top. Maybe Punisher's wearing a symbol on body armor as opposed to a article of clothing, things like that. And he got rid of the go-go boots and the gloves. And he's still recognizably the Punisher. And the Punisher doesn't wear a mask. He's sort of a roughly handsome Italian-looking guy. So as long as that's what you draw, that's Frank Castle. And I like that idea as well. So when I wrote the Punisher, I sort of dressed him down. Took away the normal Punisher costume. And most readers don't even notice it or didn't notice it at the time that we were monkeying with the look. But he's black with a white skull on his chest. I mean, what more do you need? The dark clothing and the white contrast. And I like the idea. Maybe it was Frank Miller came up with the idea of why Batman had the bat symbol. Maybe it's not, because he didn't like the yellow oval. That gave the criminals something to aim at. And of course, with Frank, he's giving them the Punisher symbol to aim at, and he's always wearing body armor. So he's forcing them to aim at his most fortified part of his body, which, doesn't make sense in real life, but in comic book sense, that's perfect logic and cool, that this guy knows he's going to get shot at. And this is the precaution he's taking. It's like, aim here, buddy. It'll hurt less. It'll still hurt, but it'll hurt less. Impact Talent. First, I want to thank you for your work on Nightwing with Scott McDaniel. No need to thank me. It was a holiday, every issue. Is there any Marvel or DC characters you wish you had worked on? Are there any characters that you were a fan of but wouldn't want to work on? I always answer this question with, I would love to do a long run on Fantastic Four with Graham Nolan. You've heard this a million times. I'm not going to say any more. Hawk and the Dove is a pair of characters at DC I pitched a couple of times. I had a take on them that was a little bit different. It didn't break the formula. Sort of reintroduced the characters in a new way to a new audience. And I thought, I would like a shot at Hawk and the Dove. I found it was, I liked it when Ditko and then eventually Joe Kane did it. But I had a different take on how to present it. And I'm not going to say it now because it was very high concept. I'm not going to give anything away here. But, those are, there's a lot of characters I wish I'd had a shot at or would have been interested in having a shot at. But these are two that I can think of. Plastic Man is a character I just have no desire to write because I love Plastic Man, but I only love Plastic Man when Jack Cole does him. And, I've had people I know, people I respect, people I admire, their talent have taken on Plastic Man, including Kyle Baker and Hilary Barta. But I think even they would admit that their Plastic Man couldn't hold a candle to the original Jack Cole creation. Cole's writing and endlessly inventive Plastic Man gags and situations and villains, I just don't think can be duplicated. I think it's something of its time period. There's this 1940s, 1950s sort of, Three Stooges, Red Skelton kind of humor charm to them that simply can't be replicated today. There's this certain, it's weird. Plastic Man was generally a humor strip, but the crimes were real. It was like the Thin Man, where it's humor, it's once over lightly, but the crimes are very real. The crimes, there's stakes. There's something at risk in the story, and the bad guys are really bad guys with terrible motives. But Plastic Man defeats them, as I said, through an endless series of Plastic Man gags. You never know what in the room is going to be Plastic Man. Is it the chair they're sitting in? The table they're playing cards at is going to turn into Plastic Man. And yeah, for a humor strip, and they could get away with that in the 40s and 50s. And, it's like an Abbott and Costello movies where they were in danger. They really were in danger. The bad guys were really bad guys. They weren't comic villains. They weren't the funny ones. It was Bud and Lou who had to do whatever they could to escape from that situation. And Plastic Man and Woozy are much the same way. And I just think we've kind of just lost that era. It would be very hard to recapture it. I wouldn't want to be assigned Plastic Man for that reason. Danny Brown, just finished reading the 6-issue trade of El Cazador. Great stuff. Since you may never get the chance to finish the story, does Lady Sin get her revenge, or does Blackjack rule the open sea? I was going to do a second volume of this through Hyperion, Disney's publishers. We had an artist lined up. Everything else, we could do another trade. And the Disney people, I think their average age was about 18 when the editors... They informed me that they couldn't see that there was anywhere for this story to go. I was like, I don't know how you can see that because I haven't pitched anything. I haven't told you what I was going to do next. And what I was going to do next was Lady Sin and the English pirate, whose name I can't remember. They team up, obviously, at the end of the 6 issues. And they have to free a prisoner held on an island, very much a Man in the Iron Mask kind of thing. Free a prisoner held on an island run by Jesuits. And the Jesuits are sailing the 7 seas, sailing the Spanish Main in a ship, a black ship with black sails that is basically a floating inquisition. And they're going to different Caribbean islands and looking for heathens and unbelievers and heretics. And this is who Lady Sin runs into and has to deal with. And that's why at the end of issue 6, she asks the English pirate, do you speak any Latin? So it also involved a lost book of the Bible. I mean, it was just a wild and crazy pirate story. The thing with pirate stories is, they can get boring if they're all just looking for treasure, depending on what that treasure is. And I thought, wow, a treasure hunting story with pirates looking for a lost book of the Bible, a suppressed next volume, the next book in the trilogy, as it were. I thought that would be interesting. So that's where the series was going, and we didn't get there. Okay, at WTK6069 says, Chuck, if you were written into a Bark-style duck story, would you be called Duck Chickson? I certainly hope so. I would be very disappointed if I were not. So, hey, if you want to contact me with questions like that, or ones that are even deeper, like so many of the questions were this week, great bunch of questions, by the way, folks. You can send those questions, suggestions, whatever, to brunobookstore@gmail.com, brunobookstore@gmail.com. It's the most direct way to reach me. I obsessively check that email a number of times a day. While I have you, if you're still here, my Conan novel, the readers seem to like it. It's getting great reviews. It's selling briskly. You can go to Archaven and get it. If you get the paperback from Archaven, you also get a free ebook version, or you can just go to Amazon and have your friendly Amazon driver drop it off at your door tomorrow. So check out Siege of the Black Citadel. I've written the second and third one. The second one should be announced soon. It is called Caravan of the Damned. And that's it for me this week. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening, subscribing, liking. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. YouTube's been taking away some of my subscribers. Some people say it's their policy. Some people say it's shadow banning. Some people saying it's dirty work at the crossroads. But for whatever reason, if I can grow my subscription list, and it has been growing briskly thanks to you people, if I can grow it more, that means more people can find this channel, more people can watch this channel. I really think there's about maybe 10 or 15,000 more comic fans out there who would like to know about this channel if only I could reach out to them. And you can help me do that by liking and subscribing and telling your friends. Why not? Share the link. So that's it for me. I will see you all down